global community. Following next in the financial vertical is a keynote by the Executive Vice President of one of the symbols of the crypto world, Binance, Martin Bruncko, speaking about building blockchain adoption.
Hey guys, great to be here today. Let me start by addressing the elephant in the room. This is supposed to be one of the keynote speeches, and it's about crypto. I mean, if you must have been sleeping if you haven't heard that, like, crypto, like, hasn't it kind of like all fell apart? Well, actually, I'd love to quote Mark Twain here. One of his famous quotes is, "The reports of my death are greatly exaggerated." And I think this is exactly the situation with crypto. So let's keep the big picture here. It wasn't so long ago, I mean, basically a little more than 6 months ago, that we have reached the all-time high. And things are down, but if you look at the price of Bitcoin right now, it's basically where it was, less than 18 months ago. More importantly, this is a very cyclical industry, and Binance was born in July of 2017. If you actually look at the chart, you can't even properly read it because they are so small, these numbers, right? And in fact, a month after Binance was born, there was a pretty big drop in the market. But again, can you see it? Not really on that chart because, because the market has grown so much through it. So the first key message I want to leave you here with is this is a cyclical industry. We've seen this before. When you're in a down cycle, build. Focus on building. That's what we've been doing with Binance. And because we've been always relentlessly focused on building, we've been getting the result. So many of you probably know that actually Binance has been the fastest growing company in the world in terms of reaching $1 billion in profit. Took us roughly half a year. We are now also one of the largest technology platforms globally. We have 118 million customers, but I think what's really interesting is the crypto adoption. It's the adoption cycle. Beginning of last year, it was kind of 10 to 20 million, barely. Now we're at 120. So this industry is still growing, and it's growing very healthily. It's now moving from the early adopters into a much more mainstream adoption. So, why has Binance been so successful? Well, we started as a crypto exchange because that was kind of the first killer app for crypto. But in reality, our focus is being way more than that. We do want to be the infrastructure provider for the crypto economy. So we've actually built a whole suite of products that really cover many areas, from fiat to crypto, P2P. We have one of the most trusted crypto wallets, actually the Trust Wallet. CoinMarketCap, that's actually the largest information website about crypto. BNB, we've been in the early days of BNB, which is now the third largest chain after Bitcoin and Ethereum. We have one of the largest NFT marketplaces. So really, we have been building very extensively and very broadly. CoinMarketCap, as I mentioned, that's basically one of the 100 most visited websites on the planet. Trust Wallet, as we're moving into DeFi, wallets are going to become increasingly important. We are actually now installed on more than 50 million devices. So very private, very secure way of doing DeFi. Binance is currently number one in 79 out of the top 100 countries in the world. And very importantly, we've been really focusing on compliance. For the past 2 years, and particularly for the past 12 months, this has been a very core focus for us. We are now a regulated company in 2 G7 economies, and we are now actually in contacts, in talks with regulators in more than 40 countries around the world. What we really actually care about the most is really advancing the whole crypto and blockchain ecosystem. That's why we've been really investing very heavily in all the interesting projects, products, companies coming and upcoming in the crypto economy. Actually, Binance Labs, our key investment fund, it's still probably somewhere around 50 to 60x returns, which is actually not too bad for an investment vehicle that was really meant to be mainly not a financial vehicle. It was meant to help start and grow the DeFi ecosystem. So let's go back to the kind of fundamentals. So really the vision that we have is the increased freedom of money without sacrificing security. We just deeply believe that crypto and blockchain is a much better technology, much better way of moving value. It's a fundamental technology, the same as the internet was a fundamental technology for spreading information, for making sure that everyone in the economy has the right information, which those of you who have studied economics, you know, in the very first class, they tell you the better information the actors have in the economy, the better it worked. So when people were saying in early 90s, okay, this is going to be such breakthrough, and all you could see was like some very simple websites, it was sort of hard to understand why are people getting so excited, and particularly the economists, very boring people. I'm an economist also by training, so I think I can say it. But basically, it turned out that indeed, internet as a machine for moving information really changed the way we work. And we really believe that this is the same thing for crypto, because crypto is all about moving value. It's a better way of doing money, and every single economy, every single economic activity is ultimately underpinned by finance. I think one more reason why we've been doing, I've been growing so fast is because we've always been committed to protecting users. And we can go through many examples. I don't think we have time for that. So now, let me maybe, I think there's a lot of founders who are in the room, a lot of founders who are watching. How did we manage to get to this level? How did we manage to grow so fast? So I think first thing, we've had very distributed teams since very early on, which enabled us to really tap into the global talent pool. We were working remotely before COVID came. Now it's actually kind of a normal thing. We're all used to working with Zoom, but actually when Binance started 5 years ago, this was not necessarily the typical thing. But we now all know that actually it helps. Next thing is, don't micromanage your colleagues, your teams. Give them freedom. That has worked really, really well in this distributed way that Binance has been run. We've always hired passionate people and making them accountable. But I think the really, key trick here is focus on execution. Somebody once said that a stupid man with a plan will always beat a smart man without a plan, which is very much true. But you also need an execution. And I think this is where a lot of us founders, this is one of those things where that really make a difference between life and death, success or not success. It's really mainly about execution. One more thing that our founder, CZ, likes to say is, you also need to be lucky. But the best way to get lucky is by working your ass off. So you just need to be really prepared when luck hits you in your face. And the best way to actually draw luck your way is work very hard. And then I think finally, you need to also focus on the big picture and on the whole industry. It shouldn't be just about you, your company, but actually working with your peers to grow the whole pie, which is what we've been doing really very much there. So now, where does that leave us now? Well, we are probably one of the down cycles. This is a very cyclical industry, as I said. In fact, this is a third cycle that we've been through as Binance, since Binance was created 5 years ago. And the best thing to do in this down cycle is to build. We are actually not slowing down our hiring. We're hiring 2,000 people globally. I understand there's a big competitor based out of Sofia, who's actually letting go of a lot of people. We have openly reached out that we're here to hire. So if you're one of them, or if you're looking to grow, definitely reach out to us. It's also perfect time to improve product. When the whole market kind of cools down and rationalizes, you can really focus on building product rather than on crazy marketing deals, which is something we've always tried to stay away from. And finally, BNB chain. We really deeply believe in a decentralized world. We believe that BNB chain now, which actually now has probably 5 times more transactions per day on it than Ethereum, it's also one of the key parts of the future of crypto. Now, finally, what can we do in Bulgaria? We're in Bulgaria. How can we help Bulgaria, and what we can do together, I think, most importantly. So, as I already said, we're really in a big hiring spree right now. So we want to hire talented people. And I think, you know, the fintech ecosystem, the way it has grown in Bulgaria, it's just phenomenal. It's actually quite incredible. The talent is definitely here. We want to be here. We want to support it. We want to grow it. And with that, not just employees, but also the entire crypto community and crypto knowledge. You know, Binance has been actually very active in educating users. We deeply believe that before you start investing, you should be doing your own research. Don't listen to celebrities who are telling you, hey, be brave, just jump in, just put your money in there. Never put your money into a project that you don't understand. Do your own learning. We have Binance Academy. This is the largest website, learning website, educational website for crypto and blockchain. You can learn there. We're definitely very interested and very engaged globally now, working with regulators on shaping the legal framework. We want this industry to be safe. We want it to be regulated, but smart regulation is important. So we just need to make sure that while the regulators are trying to introduce new rules to protect the users, they are very mindful of potentially negative unintended consequences. So this is why it's very important for us to work very, very closely, hand in hand with the regulators on developing the framework, both at the national level, but we've been also working very closely with different authorities at the EU level. I'm a deep believer in a single European market. I think the best way Bulgarian, I'm from Slovakia, so Slovakian, French, Portuguese companies can compete is if there is a single market. We really do need a single market for crypto. And finally, it's super important to follow the highest standards when it also comes to fighting money laundering and any kind of financial crimes. This industry has been very often accused of maybe being too lax about dealing with these risks. We at Binance have been taking it extremely seriously. If you want to be onboarded on Binance, I apologize if it's sometimes actually quite difficult because you have to go through a fairly onerous screening just to make sure that you are a legitimate person, that you're being put into a safe environment. And I think with that, let me close it here. Once again, it's been really, it is actually a pleasure being here. And I understand we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A, so really look forward to that. Thank you.
We have the pleasure to invite on the stage the Bulgarian unicorn founder, Krista Borisov, to continue the discussion with Martin Bruncko on the latest trends in the financial industry in a panel about innovative finance, moderated by Leisha Santorelli, news desk editor at BBC News.
Great. Good to see you.
Thanks. So let's take a seat for this fireside. I hope everyone can hear us. It's great to be here in beautiful Bulgaria. And I know that I have limited time with you before you have to dash off. So I really want to dive straight in to the economic situation that we now find ourselves in terms of a global overview. So around the world, we're seeing red-hot inflation. We're seeing central banks in an aggressive tightening cycle. We are seeing shockwaves in terms of geopolitics due to the war in Ukraine. Are you worried? Should we be worried?
I think we need to be apprehensive, but definitely not worried. Being worried has never helped anyone, right? So that's the first point. I think second point is we also need to keep the big picture here. So, I mean, global economy is cyclical. Crypto has been cyclical. I think what we're going through is another one of these cycles. We will see companies, unfortunately, going bust. Unfortunately, some people will lose their jobs. It is very, very sad, but I think it's just a part of this innovation cycle. that you have in a broader tech ecosystem. You have it in crypto. And I think this is also maybe one of those opportunities for crypto. When I was first, when somebody was trying to really convince me about how amazing crypto is back in 2013, he was an Argentinian, and those who know a little bit about Argentina, that they've been going through a lot of busts of their currencies, and he was basically saying, look, you have now a currency which is completely anti-inflationary. It's actually deflationary. So maybe this is actually an interesting opportunity also for this industry.
Well, as you said, the economy goes through boom and bust cycles, and we are looking now at the digital asset market, where it's supposed to be more insulated from those type of movements. Are we approaching another crypto winter?
Well, at Binance or anywhere else, we don't like to predict the market. So it's very difficult to kind of predict what's going to happen. But there are signs that we're going through one of these down parts of the cycle. But again, the important thing is when you go through these cycles is do you take it as an opportunity to really focus on building, on improving your product, on hiring the best talent, or do you just go there crying around in the corner and then feeling sorry about yourself because you're no longer making sufficient income? I think us at Binance, we've been always preparing for the down cycle. So this is what is also enabling us now to actually accelerate hiring rather than slow it down during this cycle.
So there are no plans for layoffs like what we're seeing with other firms within financial technology?
No, actually we've just announced that we have now about 2,000 jobs openings that we're actually actively looking for. And if anything, in my role, probably the most difficult challenge I've been facing and the most difficult task has been hiring enough people fast enough to help us keep growing. So in that sense, this is a bit of an opportunity for us as well.
So Binance is about 5 years old. So is it fair to say that through the pandemic, over the last 2 years, your firm has done pretty well as compared to other sectors where, that we've seen real challenges, real struggles? Binance obviously is now the world's largest crypto exchange based on trading volumes.
Look, I think a lot of the digital businesses that enabled people to do their whatever they were doing, any kind of task, service, goods, but enable them to do it remotely, were very much prospering. And in a way, Binance, it's the ultimate distributed business. As I was saying before, we've always been working largely remotely. Actually, funny enough, we're now becoming slightly more centralized with kind of more ordinary offices. But in a way, yes, we were probably at the forefront of this wave, of this sort of decentralization, also kind of working from home, working from many different locations, but we're probably not the only ones now.
During downturns, generally, people tend to avoid more risky assets. And as one journalist from the Financial Times put it, cryptocurrency is probably the most speculative asset possibly on the planet. So along with what we're seeing in the stock market, we've seen a heavy sell-off in crypto. How stressed are we right now? Could it get worse? Have we reached that kind of what some call a Lehman point?
I think it's important to, again, look at what crypto fundamentally is. For me and for us at Binance, it's not just an asset. It's a technology. It's an enabling technology. It's a new and much better technology for moving value. So if you actually look at it from that perspective, nothing has changed. The promise of the potential of the technology is still there. And again, going through these sort of booms and busts, well, there's been quite a number of these cycles. In crypto, everything is happens much faster than in the real economy. These cycles are faster as well. So again, this is not something we haven't seen before, and I don't think structurally it's that different from the previous episodes.
Well, financial technology over many years now has promised to democratize financial services, to move away from these traditional models, to have transformational innovation in banking, in payments. Have we reached that point, or is it still, would you say, nascent?
I think it's still early days. I mean, if you look at the crypto adoption globally it's around 3%. If you look at more mature markets, maybe 10, 15%. So it's still very early days. I think we're just starting to see a more mainstream adoption of that technology. And I think with that as well, adoption and the maturity and of the whole sector of the discovery of kind of what you can actually do with the technology, that grows hand in hand. So I think with more users, we're going to be probably seeing much more interesting examples of what you can do with the technology, which will kind of create a virtuous circle of probably drawing more people into crypto.
And as it continues to grow, as you say, what will be the biggest pain points going forward? For example, the volatility that we've seen in Bitcoin from under 10K to over 60K, and we know where it is now. Is volatility the new normal?
I don't think it's new. I think it's normal in this industry, right? And it's just a question of is the volatility going to stay the same, or will it decrease? Will the cycles actually be longer, or will they stay the same, or God forbid, become shorter? So I think in that sense, again, I wouldn't see it yet. I don't see it any dramatic change compared to what we've seen over the past 10 years of the decade of the
But
crypto.
isn't your risk appetite, your ability to tolerate that volatility quite at a different level from the average Joe, the average Jane on the street?
Well, I think this is interesting that you also have now a lot more new products, right? I mean, 10 years ago, the only thing you could do with crypto is buy Bitcoin. In fact, that was pretty much the only crypto. Fast forward another few years from then, still the only thing you could do was, bunch of few assets and hold them, or maybe sell them and then buy them again, right? But I think we're now moving into a lot more use cases, a lot more financial products built around crypto, earning products that earn you effectively income streams. You can actually now be investing in Web3 projects. And I think this is where it becomes really exciting. This is where the democratization of access to finance comes. I mean, if you wanted to invest in a relatively early stage, yet somewhat mature tech project before, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, no chance, right? You had to be a top VC to get into the funding round. With crypto, with Web3, projects actually become quote-unquote public, through the initial equity offerings much faster. And it's actually democratizing also access to these projects for investors. So you no longer need to be Andreessen Horowitz or Sequoia to get into a Series C of Facebook, right? You can actually, with Web3 projects, you can do it much more early.
We'll get on to Web3 a bit later on, but let's continue to focus on DeFi, decentralized finance, and these new financial products, these complexity, these really complex instruments that are being created, all these different tokens and so forth. Don't you think that there are parallels to be drawn in terms of what we saw in 2008 with the subprime crisis? Do you not think that it might be going too far? That we could see parallels in terms of the credit crisis and have another crash?
Look, I think the one thing to keep in mind is that, first of all, this is still a very, very, very small industry, right? I mean, the total market cap of the whole industry at its peak was $3 trillion, right? That's just a tiny, tiny fraction of the real financial industry. So that's first thing. Second thing, this is an industry that's still quite secluded in a way from the more traditional finance. I think most of the traditional investors clearly are not in the industry yet. Otherwise, it would be much, much, much bigger. So from that perspective, kind of the risks, and certainly any kind of systemic risks to financial stability globally are much, much, much smaller. I don't think we can, it's probably several orders of magnitude smaller than what we faced with a really great financial crisis, again, because just of the size of the traditional financial industry and therefore the exposure of the traditional industry beyond these complex assets. Now, that being said, yes, is there maybe sometimes too much innovation? Probably. But you can say that probably of any other part of the tech industry, right? I mean, some of these products don't probably necessarily make sense. And here is, I think, the role for the industry to kind of self-regulate itself, but also for regulators to increasingly impose kind of more reasonable and rational controls.
Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, has said that the speculation that we're seeing at the moment within the market is not sustainable, and we're also having certain valuations as completely unreasonable, that some of these coins, for example, have taken a life of their own. Do you agree with that?
Look, we don't comment on prices. You know, as an exchange, one thing you don't want to do is comment on prices of different assets. Was there a lot of exuberance? Yes. Is sort of a rationalization of that a good thing for the industry? Probably yes.
Let's talk about some of that, what you call exuberance, because working for what some people call mainstream media, our job is to try and explain it to people who don't necessarily understand financial instruments or products or developments that are highly complex. So we know how difficult it was explaining subprime all the way back in 2008. But one of the things that we saw is that by late 2021, so late last year, around $230 billion in capital was circulating in DeFi. And when you look at something like Celsius, right? Celsius was a lender. It was offering interest rates as high as 17%, as compared to what you got at a traditional bank. I'm sure everyone in this room has a traditional bank account. When it comes to this, again, a possible credit crisis and what some people may call a great deleveraging, are we not at what could be a possible turning point within the global economy, within appetite for such risky assets, in terms of how much more it can grow? Are we not seeing the market shrink instead?
Well, we are going through a cycle, so the market is shrinking now, right? But I think the very first chart I showed when I was speaking here just showed the size of the market. And in fact, if you go back 5 years when Binance was born, a month after Binance was founded, there was a big kind of drop in the market. You can't see it on the chart because the market has just grown so massively since then. So the numbers were really tiny. So I think that's the first thing to keep in mind. Second thing to keep in mind is, how do you cope with risk, right? And I think that's one of the fundamental things we're pushing at Binance is always do your own research. Don't let others tell you, don't go on a social media influencer who tells you, invest money here because this is a great way of making money. That is just not what we stand for, what Binance stands for. That's why we really, really have been focusing very heavily on education, on patient learning, because we are in here for the long term. And the only way this industry can prosper in the long term is if we avoid very painful excesses for a lot of people. And that requires education, education, education. But
a lot of the growth comes from, so-called influencers, popular celebrity culture. I mean, Binance has announced recently that you've signed a multi-year deal with Cristiano Ronaldo to promote NFTs, which have really exploded in popularity. And so is this not, again, a way to create growth by using these so-called influencers and celebrity promotions?
NFT is a really new fundamental technology. And again, it's very hard now to see the potential of NFT because it's very breakthrough and it's very early days. Why is it breakthrough? Well, it's breakthrough because we now live in a digital era, right? And in a digital era, the foundation of digital economy is a digital file. Now, one of the problems with digital files until now has been that you can create an infinite amount of copies of a digital file, which are, all look the same, right? So you can't really distinguish, what's the original file, and who does it belong to. You can't create a history, which goes back to the economic fundamentals of property rights. Again, one of the first things you learn in economics is property rights. Economies function very well if you can clearly assign property rights. If you can't do that, it becomes very, very difficult. So now, this is a little bit abstract, but we now have finally a technology that can assign property rights in a very effective way in a digital economy. So I think this is definitely, we still don't know what that really means, what will be the implications in terms of actual applications of this. But again, we're very much where we were with the internet in the early to mid 90s, right? Where this was just a much better way of spreading information in the economy, making actors much better informed. And by definition, it was clear that this was really going to cause a breakthrough and actually a step change, a positive step change in the economy. So I think with this NFT technology, this is why we're very excited about it. We don't really view it just as assets. Clearly, you can have your own opinion about small JPEGs, how value there is really attached to them. But I think that fundamental technology is really breakthrough, and we're just starting to understand what it means and how we can really use it fundamentally to change the economy and growth.
Well, we know that very legitimate businesses such as auction houses, be it Sotheby's and so forth, are moving into NFTs, and so are other major brands. But we also see on the flip side that some of the NFT valuations are, very high, and also there's a propensity for scams. Another quick one on NFTs, which again you say is a new area, is why are so many companies, and Binance included, focused on sports? So we saw Crypto.com with the naming of the arena. You've signed Cristiano Ronaldo. Is this because you're targeting a specific demographic, young single men, or is there a reason why sports is such a focus?
I think that's probably the case for some. This argument is probably the case for some of the companies, but we've been very conservative on this one. When everybody was signing up 700 million naming rights for stadiums, we clearly stayed away from that. We just really thought this was a bit, actually, seriously excessive. Same thing with all these sports and teams. We've been actually quite conservative in terms of the number of deals we've been doing. That being said, we have done we issued a number of fund tokens, because actually we believe that fund token is fundamentally, again, a very interesting and very valuable technology for sports teams. It's a way for the sports team to tap into income streams that otherwise were untappable for them. So, we were one of our teams that for which we issued a fund token is Lazio. I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to discuss the amounts, but basically the amounts that they were able to raise through their fans for their team were significantly higher than what they could ever dream of raising through the normal, quote-unquote, the traditional fiat channels. So there is a real potential there, but again, going back to our being a very responsible actor, we could have gone and issued dozens more fund tokens. And when we actually saw that the prices of these fund tokens weren't necessarily going up, we said, well, wait a second. If the price is not going up, that probably also means that there is some question about the value of these fund tokens, about the utility. So we put a brake on it, and now we're working very closely with the teams to make sure that we discover and turn it into actually a really useful tool for the team. So
you mentioned about being a responsible company, a responsible actor. Within the space and with Binance as a company itself, there are concerns about bad actors using such platforms for illegal funds to flow through, whether it's hacking, fraud, or drug sales. How do you tackle this? How do you detect such activity?
So first of all, we're super committed to compliance and to being regulated. We've put a huge amount of resources into that. Binance is now regulated in 2 G7 economies, more are coming in. So, and when I say regulated, what does it mean? Well, it basically means that particularly when it comes to fighting money laundering, fighting financial crimes, fighting terrorism financing, we now basically have implemented the same standards as any advanced banks. In Europe, this is called AMLD5, Anti-Money Laundering Directive 5. So it's very advanced procedure that in terms of fighting financial crime are the same as in advanced banks, as I said. So I think the industry is maturing, and our goal is to really drive it forward and be a leader, not just in the volumes, in the number of users, in all these traditional KPIs, but also be a leader in the market when it comes to compliance.
So very quickly, do you intend for Binance to be a force for good at the end of the day?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We believe that crypto can be a force for good, and I think that's our mission, to really make sure that this really happens.
All right, well, watch this space. Thank you very much, Martin Bruncko from Binance.
Thank you.
I think what we're going to do now is have
Great.
Another guest, but thank you again
Very
for your
good
time.
With you. Thank you.
So we are...